Pretty good. You still sound slightly far.
Because I am far away.
Exactly. That's good.
Don't stop till you get enough.
Okay.
3.
Now batting, Mike Piazza.
What? What?
Come out.
Yeah, you
Hello?
need to adjust that a little.
Evil
You're
Council.
right. Hold on, let me do that too. Okay, I don't think my eardrums are gonna bleed now.
Hey everybody, I am Player 1 and my name is Damien. Welcome to Retro Game Night. I am joined with Player 2, Kyle.
Yo.
Player 3, Ben. And Player 4 tonight, Josh.
4.
Yeah, ignore that. We are here to chat everything all about things in retro gaming, and sometimes we sneak in some new stuff too. So, how are my boys doing tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well. Someone's hungry.
Yeah, you may have to excuse Ben. He's eating
A little bit more loudly than others.
Num num. So yeah, I mean, we are here to talk about a couple things. I wanted to talk about first that amazing announcement that we heard through Nintendo Direct, which was The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Remake. I'm going to stop there. See what everyone has to say. Go.
That'll be interesting. Having the graphics redone to being the 2.5 3D, change up with it would be kind of cool. I've never played through the original one, so it'd be kind of cool to have the remake and the new graphics with it. So,
Did anyone play the original?
I played through the original and through the DX version, and just because I enjoyed the game so much, I actually did the digital download on the 3DS and played through that one again.
For those that don't know, could you describe the DX version for us?
Slightly better graphics, a lot more color, but the story gameplay, it was pretty well the same, but it really didn't need to change.
Well, there was that battle mode between Link and Mario, and I forget who else you could choose.
no, I think you're talking about Smash Brothers.
No,
Right.
it was Link's Awakening. I'm sure of it. I think there's Barbie and I forget.
Batman was in it too.
Dora the Explorer. I think. I don't know.
Swipe or no swiping, yes.
Yes.
Well, the DX version, I think that's the one I played, although I do own both of them. But the DX version, I wasn't sure what the difference was except for the graphics being touched up and color. But awesome game. The music was great. You had portability with Zelda, which hadn't been done yet. I mean, we had the NES version, and that was it. And then we go to Game Boy, and you can take it with you. Mm-hmm. It was great.
But now we have it on the Switch.
But now, when this comes out on the Switch,
Just
oh
for a
my
Switch.
God.
Well, also too with the with Nintendo Online.
Yeah.
The online service, we have the original and 2. Isn't Link's Awakening's on that, right?
No.
No?
You mean on the NES Classics,
The classic,
like the
yeah.
little channel thing?
I thought that was 2.
Zelda 2, The Adventures of Link.
Gotcha.
NES. Yeah, so that would be the direct sequel
My bad.
after the original Legend of Zelda.
Adventures of Sausage.
I'll shut up now.
Every month they're releasing, I think it's 2 games at a time, from what I remember. But
They're slowing it down now. It was 30 when it first came out, and then they did a huge, or 20.
You're right,
And then they
you're
did a more a bigger selection out again because people were like, okay, well, this is cool, but now what's next?
Now, what do you guys think of that idea? Kyle and I own Switches, and I know you guys don't, but the idea of legally purchasing a service where you constantly have NES games delivered right to your Switch. What do you guys think of that for portability in a world where we already have an NES Classic? We have emulators that we can get, of course, legally if we own the games. But what do you guys think of that idea?
As long as the Switch stays as Nintendo's sole console for a while. I think that'd be a really good idea. It does take people away from emulators, anything non-official that Nintendo would fight against.
Right.
But it would be nice to have that, especially in a more portable format. A lot of game systems are re-releasing a lot of games, but they're still tied in to consoles. You still have to plug it in. You still have to hook it up to your TV in order to play. It is nice, especially with the Switch, because it's portable. You can take it anywhere. And then to have that more legal and happier means of having these new games, or re-release older games, it is really nice, especially for those of us who love playing retro games.
So what you're saying is that most people would prefer just paying a service where they're going to get these classic games without having to fiddle or fuss with loading an emulator, getting it on something, and then playing. Of course, next to getting the cartridge itself and putting it on.
At a reasonable cost, of course.
So it's $20 for a year subscription for Nintendo Switch Online, and it includes that, which is a free download, and you have a selection of NES games to go for.
And you need that anyways to be able to be playing anything online, whether it's Splatoon 2 or
whatever you're playing.
Ultimate.
Yeah.
Smash Ultimate. So
yeah,
you might as well be, it's a nice little bonus to be able to have those older retro games, to be able to have that on there when you're already getting it for other things, because I'm a big smasher, so I'm always playing online.
$20 isn't bad, honestly. No. I mean, we're looking at other subscriptions like the PS4 and Xbox One, $60 for the year. They'll give you a slew of games for free to download every month. That's nice, but you can download classics that you already are familiar with, ones that you love, if you love Nintendo, which is kind of cool to have that all there with it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Ben agrees.
So does that entice you to get a Switch? To be able to have those retro games with you, to be able to play them on your screen, and then if the wife goes, hey, we have to go somewhere, you can just go, click, pull it out, and it's just instant portability, go?
No.
No?
No. Yeah. I have plenty of games to play with plenty of portable systems and whatever. I don't know.
So I thought that was the cool thing. It's like what we've been talking about, how we have no portability except for Game Boys, to be able to take those types of games on the go. So the first time that to be able to take any, at least the NES games that they have on the go without it having to be like a Game Boy. And then who knows, maybe they might, for a little bit more money, like, maybe $25 or $30 a year, if they start adding in SNES games to
That'd
be able
be
to
amazing.
up, if you only want NES games and online, $20. If you want NES and SNES, $30. And then, if they're able to keep going with their platform, being able to expand it, because they have that range from 20 to 60 depending on what you want to do. That might be something in the future.
Yeah. Well, and then you have the biggest interesting draw of it is the fact that you can play online with someone. So if, say, you're on your Switch, I call you up, hey, let's play Double Dragon 2-player or Mario Brothers, Super Mario. And
the
then
other
we can take turns online, which is
the other
awesome.
cool thing is that when you're waiting for me, you can be playing, and then I can just drop in.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool.
That is really cool. That's a really neat feature, because that you're recapturing what it was like to have an old console with a second player without them having to be there.
I like it.
Sorry, still chewing. I'm going to play this real quick. I just wanted to just throw that out there to all you nostalgics.
Yeah, Elmo's Adventures in Barbie Land
Elmo's Adventures in Barbie Land
versus Street Fighter.
versus Street Fighter. Yeah. With starring Batman.
Correct.
Always,
versus Batman.
always Batman. I wonder though if, for nostalgic's sake, they'll want to keep it more non-orchestral and maybe MIDI sounding, maybe.
Or being
hard to
able
say.
to, or being able to toggle back and forth.
That would be great. That would be cool.
Well,
Because
yeah.
a lot of games are, you know, any type of remakes that are starting to be able to do that, where they'll have both soundtracks on there. And
That's
to
a
be able
thing.
to do
Or
nostalgia.
pull a Wonder Boy Dragon's Trap and make it so you can switch back and forth with the game
Right,
too.
right. Well, I think
Halo did that too.
Halo did it. The first game, you can switch to old Xbox graphics, and then you can switch to the new
HD graphics.
HD graphics, and you know,
Which was a
because it was
trip.
remade.
It's a trip.
Yeah, that would be cool if they had that kind of option. Of course, you know, autosave or save states would be great, but I don't know if they'll do that. They may just put more save points, maybe. I don't know. Because I can't remember if the original game you had to go to a save point or if you could save anywhere. I don't remember.
Or just like being on the world map and being able to pull up your pause menu and save.
That would be a smart move. The dungeons would probably be... I would assume that they would make them a little harder.
Well, if they do that, then again, they would have to do the save state thing because of the generation of gamers that we have nowadays,
Yeah.
where it's like, it's now you have to hold your hand to walk through a game, so they have to update it for today's gamers.
I'm thinking for replay value, they'll do that. They'll make things kind of harder, you know, just
Yeah.
make you figure out brand new puzzles, things like that. And I'm open for
Or
that.
do like a DX version later on, or downloadable content and something that would be
Yeah.
able to add to
Yeah.
it, or add difficulties, dungeons, things like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure they'll include all the typical Link sound effects of his. You know.
Like Child Link.
Is it Child Link? Yeah, it is Child Link.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just like from Ocarina of Time.
What do you guys think of the voice?
The Macarena? Oh, Ocarina
The Macarena.
of Time. Time.
What do you guys think of that little Zelda snippet of Link's voice in it, like in Ocarina of Time?
I guess it gave into the fact that he was giving his whole effort, so he was having to do his grunts and stuff. But I mean,
Because
it
he
was just a
didn't
sound
have
effect.
he didn't have a voice technically until
No.
that game. I mean, you had Zelda 1, 2, and then 3 nothing, right?
Oh,
And,
Right.
No, there was a... There
oh,
wasn't...
you're right. You're right. When he got hurt.
Similar to Castlevania, there was the... Yeah.
Excuse me, princess.
Yeah,
I
that
know we don't
was-
talk about that one.
Oh, you can talk about it.
No, I'd rather not. I
You'd
never
rather
played
not.
them.
Which one was that one? I always forget
The
what that
CDI
one
ones.
was called. Oh yeah.
Those are the best.
Excuse me.
The Zelda that shall not be named.
That dare not speak its name.
And what was up with that version? Like, what was so bad about it?
There was 2 games. I think one was a Zelda game, literally Zelda, and the other one was a Link game. I never got a CDI. I wanted to, but never got around.
It was the
to it.
cartoony aspect of
Yeah.
it, where they did like
I think-
all the cartoon little.
I
cutscenes
think it's
and
really
stuff.
choppy, if I'm
Yes.
recalling, like the animation and the fluidity.
Like, it's not
of the-
fluid.
Yeah,
So some of the reviews said that the controls were really difficult to master. It's one of those ones where they're walking and you have to fiddle with the controls to get them to move upwards versus maybe downwards.
Or up and down a ladder.
Right.
so they may be trying to do some sort of a Prince of Persia thing, maybe, or I don't know. I never actually played it, so
Was Prince of Persia around there?
around
That time?
Yeah, it was after Prince of Persia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because CDI was probably like 94. Prince of Persia, I think, is early 90s, maybe even late 80s. Like if you go to like the PC whenever it came out, I don't know. So it could be maybe they were trying to emulate that. I don't know.
Gotcha.
But- Oh, one other thing I never did mention about the graphics. I would prefer straight 2D sprites and tiles.
Not the 2.5.
No, I love.
Well,
2D.
I think that's what that's what I was talking about before, of having to update it for today's gamers. Yeah, the 2D sprites and stuff of what we've grown up with is something that brings the nostalgia to us. But to try to keep it nice, keep it with the bird's eye view, keeping it in that dimension, but adding the 2.5 to be able to make it look a little bit better, to make it more pleasing to people today. I think that's what they're trying to go for, trying to please you while also pleasing.
I think it's mainly the 3D aspect, because I tend to feel like the sprites look better. They literally have more detail, and just because when the polygon, I don't know how many polys they do for like each character. Like for instance, I like the look of the first two or three Mario and Luigi games on the DS, and then they got ported to 3DS. But then when you play the ones that came out later, they're more 3D, and they just don't look quite right to me. Because they went 3D, and it just, I don't know, they don't seem as detailed and as clear and crisp.
You realized how fat Mario really was.
Perhaps.
Like when you see his belly and barely his feet.
There has to be a factoid out there
Except
as to
for Paper
how,
Mario.
how much he weighs.
How does that man jump that
has to be.
high?
Oh, there is, and I think it's highly debated on the Game Theories channel. And they have plenty of things where they're trying to do canon height and weight and all that stuff. And I think it's one of those debated things.
How tall
Yeah.
do you think Mario is? I picture him like a 5.
I don't know which one.
Let's say original before he gets the mushroom.
Okay, so his original form and not his LSD form.
Just him. Not his LSD form. Yeah.
He thinks he's that much taller because he's on LSD.
Non-LSD.
53 centimeters. I don't know.
I seem like he's like a 5'4" kind of guy. He seems really, really short.
24 furlongs.
Yeah, I'm not. I forget. I haven't looked into that, but yeah, it's just if you want to know any type of canon stuff for height, weight, or how heavy the gravity is in the different worlds, go to Game Theory.
How many
And
cubits
start
he
looking
is.
for him on YouTube because
It's astounding what
Matt
kind
Pat
of facts
has-
they have on there.
he goes way deeper into games of the actual science behind it and how much what the gravity is on a certain planet, especially Mario. Not Odyssey. He doesn't go into
Galaxy?
Odyssey. Yeah, the Galaxy games and how it would be black holes instead of planets because of how dense everything is.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And how jumping between the world. Yeah, he goes crazy into it, so it's pretty awesome. It's a good channel.
Did they ever say how old Link is on there? Do you recall? In the first,
It's
because I know we're getting different links, but
Yeah.
in the I'm talking about the very first
I don't
adventure.
think so.
Because I know he's got to be young, but I don't know if he was a kid though, the way he was in Ocarina of Time. I'm not sure if he was.
Are you talking about the original
First, yeah.
I don't have any information to back it up, but I believe he was supposed to be 14 because it was 2 years later in Legend of Zelda 2: Link's Adventure where he's 16.
There's been different versions of Link. Am I right?
Well, yeah, throughout the years,
Because it's not
never
the same Link.
There's only 2 instances in which games had the same Link, and that was the original and Link 2 or Zelda 2.
Zelda 1 and 2, the original.
Yeah, they were the same Links, and then in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, they were the same young Link at that time. Because Majora's Mask is played solely as young Link.
Okay.
With the different masks and all that stuff. He doesn't travel back and forth in time. He grows up and stuff depending on which mask he puts on. It changes his height, but it's always still young Link.
That's a messed up adventure for a kid to go through. I'm sorry.
Well,
They
there's a
go
lot
through
of
the woods through a bunch of
Japan.
monsters.
there's always a lot of debate on it. I mean, I've always thought that because Game Theory had a theory that it was all the different stages of acceptance of his death because of the original opening, but we see at the end that he is alive. But I've always wondered if the things that actually happened in that
Spoiler
game,
alert.
yeah.
Link is alive.
Oh my god. I've always wondered if the stuff is actually happening or if he's just knocked out and he's going through the adventure in his head because of all the strange things that are happening in the area. It's not Hyrule. It's
I've heard this theory
Temeria?
before.
Termina.
I've heard this theory before, especially with Super Mario Brothers, that it's all in his head. Like it wasn't real.
Well, Super Mario Brothers 2. I think
Yes.
is what you're thinking of.
Oh, really? That one
It
was
was all
all
a
in his
dream.
head?
It was all a dream.
Interesting. I didn't know
My
that.
favorite game was all a dream.
Wow. Now to clarify,
So-
we're talking Super Mario 2 USA, right?
Well,
because
yeah,
Super
not
Mario
Lost
2
Levels.
Japan would be the real Super Mario 2
Technically.
Lost Levels, quote unquote.
Right.
Gotcha.
Doki Doki Panic.
Doki
I
Doki
can't remember the
Panic.
whole name.
That's the one that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But in Majora's Mask, yeah, so he falls from this tree in Hyrule and then falls down into a lower part of the earth, but then there's this whole area that's open skies and all this stuff. So I always figured that he was falling, he falls down into this area and he's knocked down. He's going through this adventure in his head because of all the trauma that he's had in his past or that he just went through in Ocarina of Time. So his brain is still trying to figure all this out, with what the Gorons did and the Zoras and all and
Spoilers.
everything.
Spoiler. So, okay, well then, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, same Link?
Yes, it's the same young
Okay,
Link.
so we're talking Zelda 1 and 2, the original, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, both same Link. Those
And
4 games.
But that's it. In every
those
other
4?
game,
Okay.
yeah, in every other game, well, the Link 1 and 2 and the one in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask aren't the actual same links. They're
Same links with their own 2 adventures.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So
One
Link,
set of
Link 1 and
has 2
2
games.
is
One set of
this
Link has 2
person,
games. Yeah.
and then this is a completely new person in Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time.
Oh.
It's the same person, but not the same as 1 and 2. It's a new person, but he's in 1 and he has his
Also
own
named
adventure.
Different
Yeah.
dimension, or
No.
further in the future, or in the past, or something.
Well, that's
There's
again.
different time
If you want to
these.
go through the whole time period, what happens in
Means like Breath of Fire, where there's constantly generations of the same characters.
Well, that's
In a
that's
way,
that's
yes.
that's what the Legend of Zelda is all the time. That's why it's a Legend of Zelda, because it happens throughout an entire. It's different links. It's not technically reincarnation. It's just people who find themselves in these situations who have this.
They've been chosen.
Yeah, they've been chosen to go to deal with it. That's why the Triforce chooses this specific person, and he's technically Link. There's technically always a Zelda and also a Ganon, because wisdom, courage, and power are part of the Triforce.
And what about Zelda 3 and Link's Awakening? Aren't those 2 are connected?
There's no Zelda 3.
Yeah, there is.
Is there?
Yeah, Link to the Past.
You can call it what you want. It was
Well,
originally.
you call it Zelda 3, but it's not the same.
It was the
Link,
third.
Right?
It was
It's the third installment, right?
the third installment. It
That's
was
what we're
called
saying.
Zelda 3
Okay.
at one
Yeah.
point, but then
Just
Link
wanted
to
to
the Past.
clarify that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so that one I always just call it Zelda 3 instead of A Link to the Past.
But throughout all the Zeldas, like I said, there's always
A
huge
few
generations.
that are connected though.
There's only a few that are connected, but well, they're all technically connected.
Well, what I mean is like I said, 1 and 2, they're one. They're connected
Directly connected.
Link's Awakening and Link to the Past, and I guess one more, the one on 3DS or one of the ones on 3DS is also there. Because that
You're
one's
talking about
considered
a Link Between Worlds.
A Link Between Worlds. Isn't that considered a direct sequel?
It is, but it's same timeline, but it's
A different
further
Link.
in time. It's a different Link entirely.
It is a different Link.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I was saying in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, those are the same Link. Those two are connected as the same Link.
Yeah,
But
I
they're
knew.
all-
I knew. Yeah.
So because and that's what's so interesting about Ocarina of Time, because it splits into 3 different timelines. Of whether he was defeated, whether he what was the 3, whether he was defeated, whether he won, or it was like a draw or something like that.
Well, one was the adult timeline where he goes back in time, so there is no more hero. And then there's
So that's why it splits.
hero defeated, and then the child timeline, which is
Right.
where Majora's Mask goes through.
Right, and then the adult era goes through where Wind Waker is, and then Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, which are the Game Boy games.
Because I believe with
Yes.
the Wind Waker, without the hero, something happens.
That's the
either-
triumph.
Yeah, Ganon comes. What was that?
It's under the Triumph tree.
Oh, that was the defeat.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was under the Led Zeppelin tree. I can't
Hero defeated went through Link to the Past, Link's Awakening.
Oh, okay.
And I'm pulling this from actual Zelda.com from Nintendo.
There's a Zelda.com.
Yeah. Zelda,
Absolutely.
Zelda.com
There's everything.
/about.
.com.
Owned by Sega.
True.
And then that's where Legend of Zelda and Adventure of Link are connected at the end of the Hero defeated timeline.
Jumping back to Majora's Mask, well, that Link actually does appear again in Twilight Princess as the hero's shade. Now, regardless of how you want to
Right, yeah.
take
The
Majora's
Shadows-
Mask, is
the
it a
Shadows
dream?
Zelda.
Did it really happen? I take it as, well, he is alive because you do see a dead, adult, accomplished version of him
Right.
as the hero's shade. It wouldn't really be the case if he was, dead.
Right.
Especially when he's still young.
But that
he
doesn't
would-
necessarily mean that he had to go through that adventure. But because you remember,
Right.
whatever happened in Ocarina of Time actually did happen. He does
Yes.
have those skills.
Right.
Mad skills. Very
But-
angry.
They are
Very
truly mad skills.
Angry skills.
But he doesn't have the prestige of being the hero that saved Hyrule. He was still just a kid. It was the young Zelda that told her father about Ganondorf's betrayal, and that's what ended up leading into the events of Twilight Princess.
Well, yeah, that's the child era.
Right.
So, why is this not
Very
going into my
interesting
adult
timeline.
era? It's very convoluted. That's why I've if they would redo a Wind Waker, in the past I never had a delight in that game. I always
Let's talk about
found
that
it
game.
really irritating.
Let's talk about that game. I'm gonna say I like that game. A lot of people don't. People don't. I know some people
I
that
think my
don't.
wife enjoyed that game.
I like it because it is cel shaded. It does look cool. It's I don't know. It felt different. It was the first one that felt different. I know the
looks like
gameplay
he's
was
7.
critiqued.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like
Is he a
he's
little
7.
kid in that one?
Well,
I don't remember
if
now.
so, he's still like a third of the height of all the adults. He's tiny. He's
For some
Yeah,
reason,
have you ever
I
seen
remember
him
being
before?
older.
Have you seen him in Smash Brothers? He's not young Link. He's Toon Link. He's a really weird Link.
He looks different.
He's the
yeah.
CDI Link.
Mm-hmm.
He's the CDI Link.
No.
CDI, no.
No.
They're like, no, we're doing this.
Nothing's gonna match that.
And then when he gets his mushroom, that's when he becomes Adult Link.
I mean, for me personally, I got into Twilight Princess, but for whatever reason, I didn't end up getting into the Wind Waker. I think just the deviation from the realistic graphics that they had, and I think maybe I just didn't have the console at the time, and I just didn't really
You skipped over it.
I think I skipped over it entirely, but I did buy the HD remake for the Wii U. I haven't fully gotten through that yet. Breath of the Wild took a little more precedence in unlocking all the DLC stuff.
Let's talk about
yeah.
that one now. I mean, I will hands down say that is the greatest Zelda game for me.
Which?
Breath of the Wild.
The latest one, Breath
Oh,
of the
oh.
Wild. What's your take on it? You played through it.
I have enjoyed it entirely. As I jumped into the subreddit for Breath of the Wild, I suddenly realized how little I really knew about that game. There's some areas where some of these guys, they'll chop down a tree, stasis it in midair, hit it a couple times, then specifically direct the trajectory with an arrow, and then jump on, and they'll travel to towers that I was dodging Guardian Fire and
there's
dodging
ways.
attacks, and they're flying up, and they're just landing about just shy of the canopy, and just climbing right up, no problem at all.
You know the trains for the Gorons. There's people who have been able to use the magnets on that, be able to put two of them together and be able to just kind of fly wherever they want to. It's a pain. It takes a while to get it, but once you do, you can pretty much get to the top of the skybox and be able to just go wherever you want to go.
That's the kind of thing I like about that. You have endless possibilities, really. I mean, if you think about it.
I heard an interview about it being how open world it is and what they were trying to accomplish with the open worldness, and they were saying that, like with games like Skyrim and all that, they always felt like the game was always telling the player, no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that, and they wanted to try to make it to be like, no, if you want to do this, you can do that. And then they were able to lock out certain areas because you didn't either have enough stamina or you didn't have the right clothing or anything like that to be able to do like the heat resistance or cold resistance or whatever. But they wanted to say yes to the player as much as they could.
Right.
And so you could climb pretty much anything unless you have...
You could do everything you needed to do. And I like the fact that you could cook your own meals. You could hunt for food. You could buy gear.
I just didn't like the way that the weapons degraded. Because sometimes you get a good
was
weapon and you're like,
quickly,
I really like this weapon. And then it feels like 10 hits later, it's gone. You're just like,
gone.
oh, seriously?
Yeah. Which made
How
it
many
a good
weapons do I have to
challenge.
carry with me?
It made it a good challenge, but it could be kind of frustrating after a while. I mean, they had a great selection of weapons, though. I mean, you got a broom as a weapon. You could pick that up to like a huge broadsword.
Oh, you never found the toothbrush?
Never found a
What I
toothbrush.
did really like about it was the amiibo aspect, where you could use the different amiibos and get the different clothing of all the different... It doesn't matter what timeline it was. Obviously, it's probably just an add-on thing just to make you one... If you want to run around as the Ocarina of Time Link or the Twilight Princess Link, you had if you used your amiibo enough, you could eventually collect all the clothes and weaponry for it. I think you could even get the great deity stuff too. Mm-hmm. I got the deity sword, but I didn't get all the
as in Diddy
the
Kong
clothes and stuff. Yeah,
you can be Diddy Kong.
Yeah, with the tail and everything like that, with the peanut guns. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow,
jetpacks and all
Very
that.
cool.
That's awesome.
So, I mean, if you think about it, that's still keeping to what Zelda was to start. I mean, Zelda, the first one, was kind of open world for an 8-bit game. I mean, you could go anywhere within that 8-bit realm, but
right.
I mean, that was pretty cool for its time. And so it just followed every single one where you could do that. Although maybe not Ocarina of Time, right? That wasn't quite open world. It was more linear.
No, it was kind of open world. I mean, it's kind of difficult because all Zelda games are technically open world because they put you kind of on a map and go, okay, you can go, and they have different areas locked off. but it's not as open. It's not the
that.
open world as Breath of the Wild is, where it's like
Right.
you could climb this mountain over here if you wanted to.
anywhere,
Yeah.
Or the original. Because
Yeah.
the original, you could pretty much go
Pretty much,
anywhere
yeah.
in the map.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Carefully.
Very careful.
Yeah. I just feel like each of those games were the start of an open world kind of a feel. I mean, I can't think of another open world game that was that early on where you could roam where you wanted.
I think there are some mostly old JRPGs that were for like the old
that makes
PCs.
sense. Yeah.
They're experimenting and really open world.
As a US game, I would think that might be the first. I mean, we had Final
One
Fantasy,
of the first, at least.
Final Fantasy, but that I don't remember if that was the same year or not. Because I know the first one came out '87, if I'm not mistaken. So
Depends on how open world I mean, that's like you get to a cave that you have to go to get to the rest of the world. Or...
I think the way I define it is for back then. If I want to go here, I can go here. But if I don't feel like it, I can go back to this town and buy equipment.
Oh,
for its time, you know, you
well,
can
yeah,
do
then you got
what
like
you want.
Dragon Warrior,
But that's where
Dragon Quest.
that's where you start getting into the argument of RPG versus not RPG.
Here we go.
Oh boy.
Is Zelda an RPG?
We'll find out next week.
No, we're
Same Zelda channel.
Right
Same
now.
Zelda channel.
We'll get into this right now. So, what do you guys think, Ben? Josh?
Some kind of a gun, right? Yeah, sure, it's a gun of some sort, an RPG, bazooka of some sort. Yeah, it's RPG-esque. I've always considered an RPG, so even though it's not turn-based or whatever, but it was like one of my absolute introductions into actual RPGs. Like, it's a gateway drug.
It's a gateway drug
into RPGs.
This is your mind. This is your mind on Zelda. Any questions?
So, yeah, it was one of my first RPGs with, like,
Quote unquote.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
If you were gonna put it on display for sale, would you put in its genre or category RPG?
Mm-hmm. I do. So.
Josh?
Technically, you are playing a role. You're playing the role of Link, and you are playing.
You're
as
playing a
him.
role.
Then you might as well be playing a role of Mario or
Yeah,
Samus.
exactly.
True.
Or,
Exactly. True.
Elmo or
Isn't
whatever.
every game
Yes.
role playing at that point?
Me and
Right.
Damien have talked about this at length on the phone a lot.
In
Yeah.
pole position, you are taking the role of that car. You are. That is a role playing
Yes.
game. You are the role. That is the role.
And I agree with Ben in
Exactly.
the respect that yes, it's not what we typically refer to as role playing in like the turn based, such as the Final Fantasy games and others just like it. But in this case,
I like how
I'm
Damien.
not sure.
I like
to
how
be
Damien
honest.
played it. If you were gonna sell it and you put it online, what would you classify it as?
What would you put it as? Yeah.
We would always. I would say that it would be an action RPG.
Like with
Well,
the
yeah.
fanboys have an issue with there's Final Fantasy, and next to it is Legend of Zelda, both under the same category of RPG.
In a classic RPG is it has a battle system. It has statistics. It has
experience.
different weapons, different clothing for different that affect stats, and it's more stat oriented versus you running around. Now, again, the newest ones that kind of fly in the face of that is like Final Fantasy 15, where that is kind of action. It's a more free flow action battle system, but it still technically is. You have a wait period before you can do certain things, and things do happen in a certain order sometimes. But it is more but that is also stat based. It is different clothing, different weapons, and your health and your mana and all the different things that go along with that.
Now, I consider also the E series to be an RPG or action RPG, just like Zelda, and there are similarities too. So it's still in the RPG realm. They're both, but they are once again, not turn based. Like Final Fantasy, Dragon Warrior.
And that's why Zelda is such an interesting one for the conversation, because if you are going to go into the water temple, you need the water tunic. If you're going to go into the fire temple, you need the fire tunic. So you do have clothing that affects certain stats.
At that
I guess
point,
you
it might
could
as well
say.
be a Metroidvania then.
So that's why it's an interesting topic. So
Okay, what about
Webster's dictionary.
what do you think about when role-playing games gives you the opportunity to name your characters? Do you think that is a big portion of role-playing? Because if we think about role-playing is, of course, taking the role of someone, but I think some people would put They like the ability to put themselves, or they like the ability to put a friend, or they just like to leave the name as it was meant to be. But you have the option.
You could do that in a Zelda game.
Which
There's
one?
Some of
at
them.
least on the 3DS.
And
at
some
least.
of them, whenever you name your save file, sometimes that name is used in the
You're
game
right.
for the person.
You're right. Yes.
First name Sausage, last name Link.
And for those who are a little curious in Link's Awakening, they can be thief.
What?
Come again?
You guys missed
Oh
that
yeah,
one?
you can
If
grab
you steal from the store.
if you grab something from the store and you like circle around them, so when they're facing away from the door, you can exit out the door and then you'll be labeled a thief. You can
by
actually
everyone
steal
in the game after
Which
that.
game? Which game?
Link's
is it?
Awakening.
Link's Awakening.
I don't remember this.
Yeah, I remember being able to steal from the stores. I was just like,
Yeah.
and it's
But
bad
did you-
because then this all the storekeepers will you won't be able to buy stuff from the stores again, at least
No,
for a while.
You can, but the thing is, the next time you enter into the store, he kills you.
Oh jeez, unless you're quick,
with
right?
with flying
Yeah.
chickens.
Never kick the chickens.
That's always a bad thing in every one of those. Actually, any RPG I've seen, kick the chicken.
Kick the
They don't really like that. They're pretty mad. when
And
you do
all
that.
this just reminds me of how much I wish they would do another 3D dot Heroes. What was that game? It was
PS3, right? When
yeah,
that came
PS.
out?
Oh,
yeah.
man, I love that.
Yeah, you really raved about that one. What is that? A role playing game?
It's just like Zelda. So yeah, it
Okay.
is a role playing game, but not in the truest sense. Action RPG, you know. It's just like Zelda. I mean, even the music is like it's in the same vein. It's very old school, but very I don't know.
Kyle, I want to hear now your side of it. You don't think it's an RPG?
It's an action RPG. It's an action game.
So you're saying it has elements of it,
It
but
has
not,
elements of
but
an
not an
RPG.
RPG.
Yeah, because you have to, depending on different areas, you have to select a certain weapon. But does that weapon actually increase your strength, increase your dexterity, increase your stamina? All that stuff. Are you more stat based, or are you just looking for the weapon that's going to be suited for for either the enemies that you're going to go after, or if you're going to use the hook shot to get to a certain area? Is that a weapon? You can actually use that as a weapon in some of the fights, but does that actually change your stats?
Yeah, there's
And
no
I always feel like
stats
I always
really
feel
in
like
Zelda,
any type
except
of
for the latest one, right? You get some. Am I wrong?
no this one
You have the boomerangs,
you do
but-
Actually, there's
You do
stats
have a
in
hook
the-
shot.
in Zelda 2. There's stats. You do get experience.
Yeah, yeah. It
You
helps
level
if
up your
you find.
hot link.
It helps if you find.
And if not,
bags
you're
of
the
pee,
weakest link.
remember?
And then you'll end up being missing.
So it would. I guess it depends on which Zelda you're talking about, because that's an exception to the rule. Is every Zelda you're getting experience points and leveling up and doing that? No, that's not really building stats into your strength, agility, things like that. That's just what you're just doing what is needed for the area.
It's subjective.
Yeah,
Is what we're
it's an
talking
action RPG.
Yeah.
Not quite, because you still have the clothes and the armors and the bonuses. Those give you.
But those don't actually equate into attack power or agility to be able to dodge things, or you.
Well,
Sort
no,
of.
you're wrong. You can get rings that will deflect fire. Correct.
Yes.
There's ones that will do that. And I think
Swords that are stronger, shields
swords
that are stronger.
You have the white sword. You have the regular sword, the wooden one.
But are you able to go into it and see the actual change in his stats?
No,
or
there's no number.
there's no
or stat.
and that's
Do
the
you need
biggest.
to?
Yes, that's the biggest thing in an RPG.
You
Is
absolutely
knowing
they
there's
give
need
that
to
to
see
you.
the change.
With the barbarian armor, when you get that leveled up, that increases your attack power.
Okay,
with
so
the,
like
with
I
the
said,
ancient
there's
armor, if you equip an ancient weapon, it actually does boost up your strength.
so there's exceptions to the rules. That's why it's an action
I
game
mean, I
with RPG elements.
I
into
see
it.
the results when I actually hit an enemy, and it only takes one hit rather than two. But that's just when it comes to like a sword.
So, yeah, you're gonna have to expand on that.
No, like not seeing a stat in a screen versus but like, oh, the sword is stronger now or whatever. But when I hit an enemy, yeah, it took one hit rather than two hits.
So
Like,
it,
I did
it
see
has
the
a
result.
measure. It has a measure of strength, but there's no number.
You don't
There's
see the
no-
actual number. I just
right.
you
'Cause
see,
there are-
"Ooh, he died faster."
There are people that when you're going into an RPG, they look for the best weapon, the best armor, the best accessories, the best magic or whatever type of abilities that you can get in the game. They try to find the best build, and usually there is a best build for any type of circumstance. That's not in the Zelda games. There you have to change your equipment depending on where you're going and what you're doing. So are you really increasing his stats, or are you just changing the buffs that he has?
I don't remember having to change much.
And
I haven't played Zeldas as much. I mean, I remember just
But
keep building my character.
But if
stronger.
so, as an example, in Breath of the Wild, you have to deal with the Zoras a lot. Then you go to the Gorons area, and if you want to go back to the Zora area, you have to put back on your blue tunic or whatever. I forget what type of ceremonial garb that was needed for the wedding that you get from there, to be able to use certain abilities to swim up a waterfall.
You'll switch back and forth.
Yeah, switch back and forth. So it's not just you're building your stats to be able to let your character do what he wants to do anything that he wants to do. You have to keep switching back and forth depending on the circumstances.
So,
that you're going
like you would in real life.
So could it be said that it's more of a toolbox rather than a stat change?
That's why it's an action RPG.
An action RPG would give
There's
you the
RPG
ability to have
elements.
different tools to use for each circumstance.
Right.
I think that settles that.
Okay.
I like that. I'm okay with
And
it.
if I'm wrong, let me know down below.
So Ease does that, but it also does the stats. What's your feelings about that?
I never played these games,
Okay.
so I wouldn't be able to
It
give
it does both.
I would have to look into it. I'd have to know.
I'll say one thing I really don't like about RPGs. I'm just going to throw it out there.
Oh.
Random battles.
It depends on.
I liked it at first, but
Some games have a really high encounter rate. I
Yeah.
remember Albert Odyssey for Saturn had a super duper, just like two steps.
yeah.
Go to a battle. Two steps.
Now, do you think that kind of changes the story?
Beyond
for you?
that one had a lot.
Do you think that kind of thing, does it interrupt the flow of the story?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because you're then concentrating on every single fight as you go to just from point A to point B.
And in Japan, you're actually going to find, at least that was the case, the encounter rates are much higher. They tame it down when they bring those games
Japan
over to the
loves
U.S.
random attacks.
Yeah.
Why?
Because they're ninjas.
Everything has to be the
Surprise
element of
attack.
surprise.
That was actually one thing I hope we're not segueing too much, but that was one thing I loved about Final Fantasy XII when I had it. You see the monsters out there. If you get too close,
The monsters?
the monsters.
Eddie or?
No, there's some of those in
now
there.
I'm thinking of theme song.
And if you get too close to,
For some of you,
if
you're
you
going to
get
have to look that up.
too close, then they'll see you and they'll
Right.
come after you.
So you can run away.
But you could run away.
Yeah.
You didn't have to engage them. You
That's-
could choose to either engage them up front.
Yeah.
You could try to sneak around behind them and sneak attack on them, or you could just try to ninja your way around them and go through the area without a single encounter.
It all boils down to being a ninja.
Yeah.
Well, that is more
Ray
modern.
Labasa.
That's more modern RPGs because even 13 got into that. All the online games. Obviously, you'd have to fish enemies to come into the group, but then 15 also had that too, and even
Final Fantasy 14, you mean?
Yeah,
AKA toilet paper?
sure,
Correct.
if you say so. I've
See,
never
See,
played
that's
it.
right
I
here.
hate
This is
that.
toilet
I
paper.
hate
I
it.
played 11, and that was pretty fun online. But again, you always have to fish people over. And, but even like more modern ones on the Switch, like I Am Setsuna. If you ever played I Am Setsuna, they are in the world, and you can get sneak attacks on them, and then it goes into the turn-based battles. But they're not just random attack. They're not random encounters. It's you can see where they are, and you can choose to whether go after them or not, which is more of a modern take on the RPGs.
Yeah, it seems like most modern RPGs are doing that. There are games like going way back did that. Like, what am I thinking? Chrono Trigger, I think. I'm trying to remember. Could you see the enemies on screen?
Chrono Trigger, yeah.
Yeah. And then going even further back, Dragon Slayer Legend of Heroes was what I think might have been the first game to do that. Another Falcom game, makers of Ease, I must admit.
Is this a plug for Falcom?
But it was really cool because at first you couldn't see them, like they would just all of a sudden appear in front of you, but then you get a spyglass where for a temporary period of time you can see where they are and dodge them and not have to get into battles. And that was like back in the mid '80s.
But that's also it's a good and bad thing, because if you try to avoid all the battles, then when you get to a boss, you're kind of underleveled and you have to go back and grind it anyway. So
yeah.
There's pros and cons of when you want to do it versus
You
should you just get it done, and that's where I guess the random battles are kind of nice. But to be able to either turn them on or off, it would be pretty cool.
So I'll tell you right now. So I'm playing through Final Fantasy IX on the Switch. It was just released, so I jumped on it, loved the game. What makes me like it more now is I can turn off the random battles because I'm actually concentrating on the story now.
Right.
I think I got too distracted with all the random encounters that it threw me off. Kind of made it more strenuous just to get to from point A to point B in this storyline, and it was frustrating. And now that I can turn it off, go right through it. And it makes a big difference in enjoying the story, at least for me.
Yeah, I just went through 7 on the PS4, and it had that. It has the 3 boosters, the game boosters, and you can turn off random encounters.
And when you do the grinding, you just go back and do some grinding, and then go to your boss.
It also had 3 times speed too. So if I just mainly left them on, unless I was gonna go through an area where I knew I had to zigzag through certain areas, or just stupidity of how often things were hitting me. It also depended on how often I was getting in random battles is when I would turn them off. But generally I'd leave them on. But the 3 times speed was pretty nice, and the you're constantly refilling your health and all that. It was a nice way because I've never actually played it through the story. I've gotten through with 7. I think I've gotten to like the end, close to the end of the second disc or into the third disc multiple times, but then just never progressed any further. So to be able to go back to it now with those boosters is actually pretty nice to be able to just focus on the story and be able to beat it.
So do we think that is by any means cheating in a game by what we just talked about? Turning off random encounters, putting up boosters of all sorts to progress through the game quicker.
Blame Square.
Yeah.
It's their fault.
They're the ones that did it.
That's what I always say with
Blame Squeenix.
That's what I always say with the classic systems that are coming out too, the minis.
Yeah.
They have save states and they have rewinds and all that stuff built
Some
into
people
it
would
too.
think that's cheating.
Yeah, and so that's going to depend on how you want to play the game.
Yeah.
For I would probably stick to it as close to original as possible. But if things started getting annoying to the point of me not enjoying the game anymore, then I would turn off the random encounters. Or like I said, I've played through 7 multiple times to a certain point. So I just wanted to run through it again because I already knew the story up to that point. Right. So I just wanted to get the story because the story's really good. So
it's easy to say that times have changed as well with games. People are getting more, I feel like it's derogatory really to say it, but impatient to get through the game rather than what it was like, say, 20 years ago. I'll take my time with it. I think just it's the sign of the times. I think we're getting more busy. We are all working full time. We're exhausted when we get home. We want to just unwind and relax, not feel like we have another task to take care of in our day.
Well, when they're releasing all the older games, it is going after the people who are older now who have those full-time jobs, like you said. So we don't have the summer days that we used to have where we had nothing to do for 3 months except for play through games, or hey, I finished my homework, now I can just play this game all night long. No, we have more responsibilities, so they have to try to cater to that a little bit.
Do you think the economy is to blame a little bit for that? Because we have gamers that played games like Final Fantasy VII, Dragon Warrior back in 80s, 90s, and yet they did it, and it was fun, and it was highly reviewed. It seemed like there was more time, whereas now people are taking a second job. It seems like they're, kids are busy, so then they have to take care of kids, and there's just so much to do that they don't have any more time to spend on these games.
What?
Right.
Yeah.
I agree with that because I drive 45 minutes to work. I commute, so I can't bust out the Switch. I'm not on a bus or a train, so I can't get a Switch and just play it on my way to work.
If you had an autopilot car, you could. No, just kidding.
We're not there yet.
There's that, yeah.
I don't trust them just as much as I don't trust the people I commute around me.
Exactly.
And so it's 45 minutes each way, and then it's usually more than 8 hours at work, and then you get home and there's things to do at home, and so sometimes you just end up sacrificing a few hours of sleep to get in a little extra gaming time.
That's when I do.
But that's just unfortunately the way it is. It does seem hard, and you have to be a bit more picky nowadays. I mean, I look at some of the old Pokemon games, and oh man, the amount of hours I dropped on that.
Yeah.
I almost wish I could have taken those back.
I remember I took an entire night just to run through the opening of that like eight times, just so that way me and my brother had every starter Pokemon. Yeah. We had a lot of time on our hands
That's
back
a lot
then.
of time.
Yeah.
And I don't know if kids will. I say kids, but anyone that's not an adult, but younger people. I don't know if they'll really understand what we went through, really, because games really do hold your hand through everything now. And while it's really easy for us adults with busy lives, kids, it's a turn and burn. They get through one game, it's like I'm done in one day. Next game, done. Next game, done. Next game. Whereas for us,
It still takes me a couple weeks to beat a game.
Both ways.
With my time.
Uphill.
we travel 15 miles to go get our one video
Traveled
game.
across Hyrule twice, uphill both ways.
Both ways. But I think that is like what retro game night is about. And I think it's not just for us adults that look back on it, but if we ever have listeners that are of the younger crowd that don't really know what those games were like and they revisit it and they go, oh, this is boring. This is what it was like for us. It took us forever to beat these games, and we definitely had time, but
Give
now
it a
they've
half
changed.
hour, understand what we went through, and then turn on your boosters and run through the game. Okay?
Yeah, run through the game through the Pay homage.
Just feel my pain.
Respect your elders. If you want to drop us a line on Twitter, we're at Retro Game Night 1. That's Retro Game Night, then the number 1. Give us your comments, your questions. We'd love to hear from you. Till next time, everybody, stay frosty.
And burnt and stuff. And yeah. Yeah, let's hope for more.
Bye-bye.